At the January 12th Lansing City Council meeting, citizens encouraged the mayor and council to give unhoused folks recently relocated to a hotel on the southside more time at the hotel and to work on a holistic plan for addressing housing needs in the city. The deep green proposed data center got some attention. Council set their schedule for the sale and rezoning of the site for the project. Residents spoke up for and against a rezoning request for a planned development of a 29-unit apartment complex near Moores River Drive. Just a heads up for this episode, there is some discussion of violence. Keep that in mind if you have small kids or people who don't want to hear it. Welcome to What Lansing Council, a podcast transforming Monday night's Lansing City Council meetings into an enthralling recap. I am your host, Jill Dombrowski, and today my very special guest is Julie Powers. Julie currently works as the Executive Director of Immigration Law and Justice Michigan. She has been in the nonprofit sector in and out of Lansing for over 30 years. Immigration Law and Justice Michigan is dedicated to fighting for justice and advocating for the rights of immigrants in Michigan to create a more inclusive and compassionate society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Thank you so much for being here, Julie.
Thank you for asking me, and I'm glad we were able to finally get this on the schedule. So here we are.
And also, you live in my neighborhood, and we've been to some bonfire parties together.
Right.
And you have been very kind to entertain my small child during those parties. Thanks for that.
Yeah, for anyone listening, her small child is remarkably well-spoken and intelligent and thoughtful, especially for someone of her youthful years. We're East Side. It's where I started my Lansing adventure, and it's where I am now. So
amazing.
Came home.
Amazing. Well, we're so glad to have you in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
And how would you describe Lansing in your own words?
You know, it's funny. It's home, even though I didn't grow up here. My family moved around a bit due to family jobs and stuff like that. I was born in East Lansing, Williamston, and kind of lived all over, lived in Traverse City for a while, went to college in Alma. And I never called Lansing proper home until about 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. And then here we are. Like I keep coming home. I've done 2 tours of duty in the DC area. Lived in Detroit suburbs, and then now I came back. I bought a house 3.5 years ago on the east side. I'm on my same street as I used to live on. I am part of the Magnolia Mafia, if you know, you know. But we are, you know, Lansing is hard to love, but once you figure it out, you realize that this city is built for everybody. But the thing that I love most about Lansing is that we are her fiercest critics and our most devoted defenders. Mm-hmm. I call it home, and it's nice to be here, and it's nice to be back.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And also, what are some things you'd love to see change in Lansing?
Honestly, I think that we struggle with good jobs. A lot of our jobs are tied up in state government, higher education, and healthcare. And those are important sectors of our economy. But I think that, I don't know how many more dispensaries we can have. And I wish that we had a little more diversity in the jobs that were available in the Lansing area,
sure, broadly,
and that were more accessible to folks. Lansing Community College has an amazing trades program. And I know that, I wish we could kind of blow that up a little bit in a nonviolent way, of course. But and I also think too, something else I'd change, our neighborhoods there's a lot of inequality. Mm-hmm. There are parts of zip codes that have, super high home values, and there's lots of resources there, and they get a lot of attention, and they get, there's a lot of money in elections, which means they get bigger representation. Mm-hmm. And then there are neighborhoods that are absolutely struggling, mm-hmm. and it takes decades for them to get the kind of attention and investment that they deserve.
So I want to talk a little bit about the work you're doing now.
Sure.
And through the context of, I just got a message from a good friend of mine this morning who works at MSU with students there. And she said to me, she has an MSU student who lives downtown in primarily an immigrant housed neighborhood. And the student watched Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE agents wait outside a house for a middle school aged child in downtown Lansing, grabbed him when he came out to get on the school bus. What can this person do to help out, to follow up?
Well, first and foremost, bearing witness is a huge part of this, because to try and track that child is going to be difficult, because ICE's new practice is to remove people who are taken out of the state of Michigan as quickly as possible. They're moving them to Indiana, Ohio, not so much Illinois. I think they're pretty afraid of their governor. They need to get license plates, physical descriptions if they're able, take video from a distance, do not engage. We know now that ICE will use any means necessary, including killing and murdering unarmed observers. Yeah. There's a rapid response network. There's a Midwest rapid response network. There's a state of Michigan rapid response network. Right now, my recommendation is that you call our colleagues at the Michigan Immigrants Rights Coalition. They have a hotline that's available during the week. And since I'm guessing as the child was getting on the school bus, that's a good time. The other thing is that if the person is able, they should call the school district and let them know. If they have the number of the home, they'll be able to track down the student. That student should have contact information, emergency contact information, whether it's parents or other legal guardians. Those folks should be the first to know, because they have tools at their disposal and they have the ability to elevate it through the administration, through their internal administration, like Lansing School District.
Okay.
That's a great way to start. The other thing is you can call Lansing Police Department. Lansing has not signed a 287G agreement, thank goodness. We do have...
And what is that?
A 287G agreement is an agreement where local law enforcement agrees to act as agents of immigration enforcement.
Okay.
It is a deal with the devil. It provides millions and millions and millions of dollars to cash-strapped law enforcement agencies, and it basically turns them into a private army operating on behalf of ICE. Now, the difference is that sworn law enforcement officers, like our City of Lansing officers, they have significant training. They have to go through the academy. They have ongoing professional development. They have rules of engagement. They have a board that oversees their behavior. Mm-hmm. And if they do things like what we saw ICE do in Minnesota last week, they would not only lose their jobs, but they'd probably be in prison for murder. There is, when law enforcement gets involved in immigration activities, at least they're operating with some training and some ethics. But ICE has no... They have demonstrated that there is no interest in training them properly, and they're funneling money into local law enforcement because they want to intimidate people. Mm-hmm. They've announced just yesterday, I think, that now the intention is to go door to door in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, asking people for their papers. So in this case, call the school, call 911. Report what's happening. The thing is that now we know, because ICE doesn't have like a specific uniform. They're not wearing badges. They're not presenting warrants, even though they're required to, signed by a judge. And by the way, I know every immigration judge in the state of Michigan. There are no signatures on any of these disappearances. We do have some folks who are up at Baldwin, which is the for-profit, private equity-owned concentration camp, which is halfway between Traverse City and Grand Rapids. And that's the first stop for many of these folks. I do not know where they're taking the children right now. They could put them in Detroit, but they may spirit them out of the state. We can try and track the child, but we have to have their name. And again, our friends at Michigan Immigrant Rights Coalition can get access. And we have some volunteer attorneys who are spending most of their time at Baldwin, trying to make sure that everyone there has representation. But this is a child. My organization is one of just 4 that represents unaccompanied refugee minor children. In the state of Michigan. We work with the state of Michigan to represent those children. It is my absolute fear. And these, by the way, these are kids who came like out of refugee camps who have no family members, and they're in foster care or they're in foster to adopt families throughout the state. These kids come as young as 6 months. Yeah. So these are potentially children who could be disappeared. So stay vigilant. It also helps. One of the things that ICE has demonstrated over and over again is they're afraid of witnesses, and they're extremely afraid of large numbers of witnesses, preferably those who look like me. An army, I guess the new right-wing talking point is wine moms. Okay, sure. I'm not a mother other than to my dog, but sure, I'll take the hit. And if standing guard over children, with a bottle of wine is what gets it done.
Wine moms come together.
That's right.
Now's our time.
Whoever it takes. I will say too that some of the most impressive and absolutely incredible volunteers who are bearing witness, specifically at Baldwin, but at some of the other counties in Michigan that have signed these 287G agreements, are elders. They're elders who bring their camp chairs and coolers, and they are doing an amazing job. And there are these groups of volunteers all around the country, but right now, it's coming at us on all fronts.
Yeah.
But I tell you, watching our friends in Minneapolis go hard every single day, every single night, they're doing volunteer patrols. And they're keeping the ICE agents up all night. It's like my favorite thing. And I realize that sounds very petty and unprofessional, but the truth is that at this point, this is what is standing between us and the fall of democracy.
What groups can people join, would you recommend?
Well, I would say first and foremost, I would make sure that you are, as you are able, if your pocketbook allows, join the ACLU.
Okay.
They are doing the legal work at the national level, and that is who is going the hardest. And they are the ones, along with coalitions to which they are members, they are working their tails off to make that happen.
Okay.
We need volunteers at my organization at Immigration Law and Justice Michigan. But I would also say support our friends at Michigan Immigrant Rights Coalition. Locally, if you have the time and interest, support the Refugee Development Center, RDC. Mm-hmm. We are a little bit more organized than people give us credit for.
Nice.
So anyway, but yes, get involved. But what I want to say is this. I know people want to volunteer. They want to get in the streets and hold signs. Go to protests. If you look like me, then go to protests. Make the phone calls. The blowback on you is going to be limited. And you should put your bodies in between immigrants and law enforcement. If that means that you work with the PTAs or things like that to provide safe harbor to get children to school and on the bus safely, then that's what you do. Physically intervene in between, because again, the risks are lower for people who look like me. And I'll say this, there are a lot of people who finally woke up when Renee Good was murdered by ICE. There are a lot of people who look like me who went, wait, they killed a white woman. Yeah, they did. And they're going to kill a whole lot more, because at the top of the line, this is all about racism and sexism and ableism. But this is what it is. And the thing that we can do as people who look like me is physically intervene, witness, support organizations that are doing the work on the ground, and don't bury your head in the sand.
Yeah. Live in reality.
That's right.
Great. Here we are. We're going to talk about the meetings.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a review of the January 12th, 2026 meeting.
Right.
We're starting with the Committee of the Whole, and our current Lansing City Council members are Ryan Cost, representing the 1st Ward, Dianera Navarez-Martinez of the 2nd Ward, Adam Hussein of the 3rd Ward, also Council President Peter Spatafor of the 4th Ward. Our at-large members are Tamara Carter, Jeremy Garza, who is absent, Clara Martinez, and Council Vice President Trini Pelivanoglu. 7 out of 8 council members present. Also at the Committee of the Whole, we have the City Attorney, Greg Venker, Sherry Boak, the Recording Secretary, and Mark Lawrence, the Mayor's Chief of Staff. We started the meeting off with Chris Swope, our city clerk, and he had 2 items. First, there's a commission to figure out the compensation for the elected officials, and also they're moving around a few of the election polling places because the school district and also the Unitarian Universalist Church don't want to be polling places. So we're moving to another church and also the Potter Park Zoo. Councilmember Hussein says, and how are you notifying people that this is being done? Are you doing it in multiple languages? Clerk Swope says, we have a multi-layered approach to getting the word out with emails, mailers, and signs. We don't have a lot of multi-language support because we don't meet the population threshold to require it. Councilmember Pelivanoglu says, I know some people don't feel comfortable going to places of worship like churches to vote. Can you remind people of their other options? Swope is like, yes, there's early voting for all elections, even though this is not required for smaller elections, as well as absentee voting. We have 23,000 out of 88,000 registered Lansing voters on the absentee list who get their ballots every election sent to them in the mail. And next, there were 2 folks there to talk about the Deep Green Data Center. I'm not sure exactly the role of these people, but they seemed some sort of Deep Green contractors. They did not have British accents.
Okay.
They were like, listen, this is going to be a different kind of data center. We are investing $120 million in the local community with groundbreaking closed-loop water glycol cooling heating systems that are going to interface with the BWL infrastructure, and we're going to pay 100% of the cost to integrate with those. And that's the reason why we chose this site for the economic benefit of the city that's going to come from this heat recycling. There was a public comment before their presentation, and this person said, is this the best use of the land? It's naive to think that there will be no problems with data centers. No data center is without its problem. I don't understand what this closed loop thing is, and what's the impact of this going to be 10 to 20 years from now? To his credit, Councilmember Spatafor did ask the Deep Green representatives to speak to this comment, and they were like, it's a closed loop. They just closed loop. I don't know how other way we can say closed loop. The cooling of the servers and the heat will go into BWL's loop. And I think another way they could have explained this is it's much like the way coolant is circulated around a car engine. You have the same fluid that's being used to cool down an engine, and then it's being recycled and heated up. So there is a controlled body of liquid that is just being reused again and again. And of course, there's leaks and it will be needed to top up, et cetera. But BWL currently has a system to heat commercial buildings downtown by recycling water through this loop.
Right. They've had that for decades and decades and decades. So, although, I would imagine that at some point the city or the BWL is going to transition off of the steam heat and chilled water system. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where they're at in that process, but they've been discussing that for a long time. So, yeah, I would say I think part of what I'm hearing you say and what I heard last night was the folks from Deep Green and the local Michigan-based folks that they've hired to talk about this aren't doing as good a job about listening and explaining it in a way that's accessible. But more importantly, they're doing all the talking and BWL is saying very little. And I think that for many of us, especially those of us who've been around Lansing for a long time, we know a lot of people who work with the board. It's just they're our neighbors. Mm-hmm. And, we've been with them through a lot, including the ice storm, which I may possibly still have some trauma about. But I think that, it would be really helpful if there was a lot more common sense education about how it works. Mm-hmm. And I want to hear from the Board of Water and Light on what their opinions are on this. Yeah. Their team knows how to explain this. So I would just say this is an education opportunity. Yeah. And they've brought in some pretty high-powered comms folks to help them out. But the comms folks aren't maybe meeting the moment. I think that
the public relations people.
Yeah. And I think that there needs to be more better, if you will, comms. Yeah. And I'm not certainly, but where are the environmental advocacy organizations? Yeah. And I used to run MidMIAC, for heaven's sakes. Where's MidMIAC on this? Right. Have they issued, where's Michigan Energy Options? Where's Michigan Environmental Council? Yeah. Those are the folks who are the opinion leaders. Mm-hmm.
Let's hear your opinion.
Right. And and have those organizations out there. Yeah. And if this ends up being a good deal for the community, line them up to do some of the talking.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There were a few other data center-centered comments later in the meeting that the representatives were in the audience for, so they were not responding to. Right. One person was a former licensed realtor and says, we need to be looking at the sale of this property more carefully and have more transparency around how the property value was determined. What's the future value? We should have a third-party appraisal done. Another person says, a data center takes in raw materials and adds value to our surrounding economy. We, with this data center, are sending a message that Lansing is a community that will embrace new technologies. It is controversial, but it has great potential. The data center has a positive economic impact and is right-sized for our community. Another person says, yeah, I agree that data centers produce value, but there are lots of other ways to innovate around this. This data center has a high probability to raise our utility rates. Their closed-loop system is currently untested. They don't know exactly how it's going to work. And this is speaking to something that's going to be coming up in future meetings. This commenter says, I like the idea behind Council President Spatafor's proposal for 10% of the proceeds that BWL is going to make take from this data center to go towards a fund to defray housing costs for folks. But if we really are serious, let's do 100%. And is this proposal going to be hitting the data centers that already exist in Lansing in the same way? So, and this proposal that President Spatafor came up with, it wasn't even introduced in this meeting. Like, it's going to be at future meetings.
Oh, Lansing, let's do everything in a minimal way. Like, let's do this 10%. And I get it. I understand that it was an attempt to sort of make, to create a positive spin on some of this, and I do get it, but I also think that it's incrementalism. I mean, why can we not go full-throated, do it all?
Be bold.
Be bold. Instead, we're going to try and offend the least number of people.
Yes. Someone else, which I loved, said, our focus should be on housing people, not computers.
Well, and if we're providing a nicer a living environment for computers than we are for people, that definitely begs the question, what are our values?
Yeah. Somebody else says, now is not a great time to say yes to a data center. We're buying our natural gas from Canada. If President Trump pisses them off, then all of our electricity is going to get a lot more expensive.
A valid point.
Councilmember Hussein and Cost are working hard to nail down the timeline for everyone for where this project is at with council. And I'm going to say this, and hopefully this is correct. So at the next council meeting, January 26th, Deep Green will give a presentation to the Committee of the Whole. The following meeting, February 9th, will be a public hearing at council with another presentation by Deep Green. And then it will go back to the committees, and the specific items that the city is involved with here are the rezoning of the land parcel from urban core to industrial and the sale of the property, which is currently city property, to Deep Green. And the earliest council would give their approval for these two items would be at the February 23rd council meeting. Yeah. And the Deep Green folks add, we are also having a Zoom meeting for the public on the 15th of January and an in-person meeting at the Lansing Convention Center on the 24th. And they gave their website where folks can learn more and contact them. And I have that linked in the show. So council set the dates for the public hearings for the sale and rezoning of this property, February 9th.
Yep. And that aligns exactly with what our council member, Coast, did post the timeline.
Okay.
With links
Great.
And locations for every single one of those things. So
he's on top of it.
Yes.
So we have the regular meeting. And to start things off, Councilmember Navarez Martinez does give a remembrance for Renee Nicole Good. And this is the Minneapolis woman killed by the ICE agents last week, saying we stand with Minneapolis. There's a tribute to the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Commission of Mid-Michigan, recognizing their work in the community and celebration organized for Dr. King this year. Guest speakers at this event will be civil rights advocate Dr. Diane Nash, who worked with Dr. King, and Michigan Supreme Court Justice Kyra Harris Bolden. The 8 commissioners there to accept the tribute went around and gave hugs to all of the council members, and I hugged the person next to me in solidarity.
Adorable.
Yes. Next, President Spatafor read off the council committee assignments he has doled out for the year. I haven't found that posted online yet, but hopefully it will be soon. Next, Mayor Shore says, we had a good community budget meeting earlier, and we are still looking for input. So he gave a link for that, which I've added. There's another Mod Pod selection meeting coming up, and that's for the modular pod units that the city is purchasing from Kalamazoo to be temporary housing for folks. And he said a new site has been added to the list. This is at the Ingham County Human Services Building. And he also said we had a great firefighter awards ceremony, and the city will be doing mobile food distribution this Saturday. Councilmember Hussein says, thank you to all who came to my third ward constituent contact meeting last week. And to the mayor, we've got some broken links on the city grants pages. So can you please take a look at that? And also regarding the firefighter award ceremony, I want to give congratulations to Calvin Jones. This is the second year in a row. He's the firefighter of the year, and he is a Lansing Public School graduate. Clerk Swope welcomes a new intern who aids in the explaining of the meeting and getting people signed up for public comments. Clerk Swope and President Spatafor then reiterated the public commenting rules, of which there are many, because this is a business meeting. So we're going to get into the public comments now. First off, someone said, please demonstrate your priorities to collaboration and public service. Put the public comments first in the meeting. People are making the time to advocate for each other and should be given priority. Business leaders who are there can wait and patiently listen to their constituents. Then I'm combining a few comments here. People said, thank you to city officials for making the 6-week stay at the Causeway Bay Hotel possible for former residents of the Dietrich Park encampment. So these are unhoused folks who the city decided to kick off of a place that they have been at for a number of years, and they're giving them 6 weeks to stay in a hotel. And someone says there's some miscommunication about unhoused people that I want to clear up. 100% of the folks who were offered a stay in this hotel, they took it. But so far, only one person has found stable housing. Volunteers and organizations supporting these folks now have been put in an impossible position. These people want to know what's going to happen to them next, and we don't have any good answers. These folks have life circumstances that prevent them to going into already full shelters in Lansing. They have medical conditions that disqualify them. They want to stay with their spouse. They have pets. We need to find permanent solutions for them, or they will be back in unsafe conditions. More people say give them as much time as they need to get secure housing. If not, what was the point of this? And they're just going to be kicked out as they were many times before. One person says, I was homeless for 4 years and the shelters would not accommodate me because of my medical disability. Another person says, I had a horrible holiday. I didn't take any time off. You made the decision, and you being the administration, to evict this camp and its residents over the holiday after you said you would not. I spent it doing extremely traumatizing work to move elders and people with disabilities and helping them to make decisions about which belongings to keep while cops were waiting. A judge ordered you to help, so do it. It's breaking my heart to give false hope to people who just want to hear that more help is on the way. Somebody else said, 2 people have died during this move. It's a complex situation, but to the mayor, you could have left these people alone and they might still be alive. Let people stay in the hotel indefinitely until each and every person has secured a housing voucher. These folks have worked so hard. I have met them and found them to be lovely people. I have come away with so many interesting connections. These people need the most help from us. We cannot look away. We need a plan. We need a way for the aid groups to work together. We need housing first. All the money we are planning to spend on the Mod Pods, let's build some real housing. Someone else says, people want to help. We had over 60 volunteers show up over Christmas to help. Not every city has that. Let's coordinate this effort. The city can help getting everyone on the same page for coordinating. One of the people who's staying at the Causeway Bay Hotel said, I have a hand injury and I'm waiting on surgery, and that's preventing me from rejoining the workforce. I need a little more time. I don't want to be recovering from the surgery while sleeping on the sidewalks. I don't want to stay in this hotel forever. I just need some more time. Another person staying at the Causeway Bay as a guest said, I have secured a job since this move. I got my first paycheck today. I will lose this job if I am kicked out of this hotel. Let me stay long enough to save up for a security deposit on a new place. The hotel stay is working. We just need a little more time. Another person who has been sleeping out in the elements says, I've been harassed by the police for doing nothing. What I do is read comics at the library all day and then do some smoking and drinking in the evening. I am not violent. Also, I would love to see the river cleaned up and these poor school kids who have to go to school at 7:30 a.m. in the morning. That is rough.
Hey, it's public comment. Folks have a lot to say.
Yes. Then somebody said, I am here to give an apology. At the last meeting, I made some ill-informed and inappropriate comments saying old white people and others built Lansing. I want to amend my comment to say all people contributed and continue to contribute to the success of the city. And I just want to say, if you haven't seen the episode of America 20 to Life with Michael and Erica Lynn and Loretta, I would encourage you to check it out. They take her through systematic racism and the treatment that Michael had while working as a firefighter that led to his discrimination lawsuit against the city, which he won, as well as they're challenging some of her other remarks she has made in the past. And they didn't have to do that.
Right. No, they were very gracious in lending their time to do some education there.
Mm-hmm.
And And I think the public comment period, I mean, I've sat through a lot of public comments. It's always eye-opening, and I appreciate folks who take the time to get there because it's not easy. You got to go through security and up an elevator, and the elevator doesn't always work, and council chambers aren't exactly the most comfortable or accessible for folks. So it can definitely be a challenge. And of course, I firmly believe that a lot of our legislative process and practices are deliberately meant to keep people out of the process rather than be inclusive. And I'm not saying that Lansing does it specifically, but I think that we definitely are seeing a lot of that. And I have to say the situation with the Causeway Bay, I used to work in affordable housing, and I'm so impressed with the unhoused folks who are now staying at Causeway Bay who showed up to make the case on behalf of others. Who shared their stories. They didn't have to. That's their private business. I'm grateful to them for continuing to do the education every frickin' time. They have to be the one educating folks. But the thing that I took away, the thing that just kills me is that over and over and over again, the message that came out about this whole situation is that it's been the volunteers and a couple of key nonprofit organizations who are bearing the burden because of an action that the city took. They're the ones doing the work. 60 people showing up in the Christmas to move people, to work through their belongings and make sure they had their medications or whatever it was, and making sure and transporting people. Where was the city? They have an entire office, actually two, that have to do with housing and human and social services. At the very least, the city should have provided, moving vans and not done it on Christmas Eve. I mean, there's a story there, and I think it's folks want it to go away. They don't want to have to deal with the hard part. Why are folks unhoused? Why is there a housing crisis in Lansing? There's a lot of factors. It's not black and white. It's not easy, and we've had a housing crisis in Lansing for 20 years, probably 50. I mean, we've had issues, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, it feels like the city made a half-assed attempt to fix what is a super complex problem. And every time we put a Band-Aid on it, we kick the can down the road for another couple of weeks or a couple months. That's not a solution.
Yeah. And no one wants to live like that.
No. Why can't we treat unhoused people with some dignity?
Yeah. Next, somebody says, in response to the apology, casual racism should not be tolerated at meetings. I believe in free speech, but we don't allow swearing. We should also cut off racial slurs, and folks should be banned from speaking. Somebody else says, I agree. People of all types built this city, especially unions and communities. We need to keep this going. When survival becomes illegal, we are no longer living in the land of the free. He has this printed on his shirt. Housing and food are essential and vital for survival. It's not just one thing happening in Minneapolis. The ICE agents are continuing to grab people from their workplaces, and if they find out they made a mistake, they just dump them wherever. Somebody else is there to say, I'm concerned that the people's right to choose their trash hauling company will be taken away. Also, fix the roads. Lake Lansing and Mount Hope especially are terrible. The city is squandering its money. Two more comments here. Somebody says, as part of the combined sewer overflow separation work going on the west side, please do not approve more noise waivers for them to work on the weekends. We're over it. Also, we are losing our tree canopy as more and more trees are being cut down indiscriminately. It will take over 20 years to reestablish these trees. We have no communication from the city around this, no city forester. They're using terrible, old, outdated data sets. Let us help. The community will do a tree survey. And somebody else says, it's tough listening to these folks talk about homelessness, but also we have a right to live in a city where the environment is conducive to mental health. And I'm talking about trees. I'm concerned about the city's plan to cut down trees along Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard to make room for more commercial development. This is hypocritical. We have forced removal of Black families who built this city. We need to treat every part of Lansing as if it were Moore's River Drive.
No lies detected. Yeah. There were some profound statements at last night's council meeting. Let's put it that way. And I don't know that it's necessarily going to resonate with folks. And sometimes it feels like, like there's a war on Americans right now from our government at the federal level. But also, I think we have to, you can be upset about multiple things at one time. It's this magical thing called compartmentalization. And sometimes, yeah, you have to rank order them, but I agree. And I think that the city, unfortunately, has a long history of not investing. And we have a great arborist for the city, but she's one person. And she cannot be everywhere at every time. And if there's no internal structure to support that role, what can we do? But there are so many other advocacy. Like, I love that the citizen suggestion about doing a tree survey.
Yeah.
Because I got to tell you, do you know why we actually know where every sidewalk is in the city of Lansing? Me and an army of about 200 volunteers spent 3 years walking every single sidewalk in the city of Lansing and documenting it.
Wow.
It was called the Lansing Sidewalk Survey.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and shout out to Andy Kilpatrick with the city. He and the AARP of Michigan and Mid-MEAC, where I was working at the time. I walked 734 miles of sidewalk, which is why I get really, really mad when people don't clear their sidewalks and I say mean things about them under my breath as I walk by.
Whoa.
734 miles of sidewalks, friends. And they're in various states of disrepair. Now, this survey is now over a decade old, but it has laid the groundwork for the plans. And so I want to circle back to some of this about the roads. The number one lever for roads is through what's called the Municipal Planning Organization, the MPO. And here in mid-Michigan, that's the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission, TCRPC. TCRPC, all of the funds that come into the region for roads, other than what an individual municipality sets aside for road repair, and this we're talking tens and hundreds of millions versus like a local city might do $1 million. It goes through Tri-County. All of those decisions are made, and they're public meetings. People can go to them. They're not accessible via Zoom usually, but you can go to them, and you can let your opinion be heard at public comment period. But more importantly, you need to know who's representing your municipality on that and who's prioritizing those projects.
Okay.
I used to go in and swing and to make sure that all of the non-motorized transportation projects were rank ordered in the order that I deemed important.
Sure.
And it was my job, so I could go during the daytime to these meetings. But they control hundreds of millions of your tax dollars.
Interesting.
And they prioritize it on how they're spent. Those projects are deigned 7 to 10 years in the future, or like forward funding.
Sure, yeah.
And then they have to work with the state, et cetera, and the U.S. Department of Transportation. And like now we can't prioritize anything that's non-motorized transportation. We have to be car focused now under the new administration. So all of the projects that were in pipeline had to be re-reviewed.
Yikes.
Yes, because people who walk are the problem, right?
Yes.
So anyway, my point is this. If you're not getting involved and serving on boards, bodies, and commissions that have purview over policy or dollars, or both, and then you want to complain about it, there is some cognitive dissonance here. Now, I also understand that there are reasons that preclude people for doing that.
Sure.
Time, resources, transportation, whatever. But there are some boards, bodies, and commissions where those aren't a factor.
Yeah.
And I have spent a lot of time through the last decade and some helping people find a way to get involved on boards, bodies, and commissions.
I want to say to people, too, when you get involved with that, you may not feel like you're immediately making a difference, but the knowledge that you're going to gain from doing that it will slowly accumulate. You will make connections. It might be a slow process, but it is
exactly.
It's worth it.
You meet some interesting people, but more importantly, once you've served on a board, then when you want to go to something different or maybe a larger thing, you kind of get waved in because you're a known entity.
Yeah, you've had some experience.
And then, this is how we change. This is how we make policy change. Yeah, right.
Level up. There's a little bit more here of business meeting things to go through. So they did give a make safe or demolish order for 810 Beulah. Next, the city says they're talking about how they're applying for a Transportation Economic Development Fund program on behalf of the airport for $2.5 million to repave the road going to the airport off of Grand River Ave. This will also support a private business, Nile Wave, looking to put a facility there with 70 projected new jobs. Then there are 2 scheduled public hearings. One for a property rezoning for a parcel on West Mount Hope, as far west on Mount Hope you can get right before it merges with Moores River Drive, to go from a single-family unit to a multi-family unit with developer Andrew Aboud. hoping to construct a 29-unit complex with 15 one-bedroom and 14 two-bedroom apartments and 55 added parking spaces. One public comment says, "Look, we are in a housing deficit. This planned development is in my neighborhood, and I am looking forward to welcoming some new neighbors." Another person says something similar in support. Then a neighbor is there who says, "I am worried about my property value. This new development will negatively affect it. Who is going to be the on-site manager? They promised to mail us more information about this plan, and they never did." Another neighbor is there worried about water runoff. "We recently had a lot of problems with water damage, and we had to replace a carport." An engineer for this project plan development is there and says, "Look, we're going to put in catch basins for rainwater. We have over-designed already. We're working with the system, with the city specs. Like, we have worked in the city for years. We know how to do this. We're going to do a great job." The developer is also there to show his support for the project. There's another scheduled public hearing for a rezoning also just south of Reotown on Island Avenue to merge an existing industrial property with a residential property. And so this small property is currently zoned residential, and it's going to be, they're trying to rezone it to industrial so that they can put a parking lot on it. This property has been sold by the land bank at auction years ago. Nothing has changed on it for a number of years. With the current zoning rules, you can't build much on it, Councilmember Hussein says. So there's one comment here, and this person says, "We should not be taking land away that is already zoned for residential development. We have an absurd amount of parking already in the city. I happened to be at this planning meeting, and one of the, quote, benefits stating by the industrial owner who wants to take it over is this will displace some unhoused encampments that have been on the property in the past." So that was the business. I'm going to give my best dressed awards. Number 1 goes to the speaker with a gray shirt he had printed up with white lettering saying, "When survival becomes illegal, we are no longer living in the land of the free." Good job making your own shirt. With runner-up, we have Sherry Boak for a black shirt with a long white macrame throw over it. Somebody on the Dr. MLK Jr. Commission had a teal crushed velvet jacket. Councilwoman Clara Martinez had a flowered shirt with big red earrings. Councilmember Dianara Navarez Martinez had a cheetah print shirt with gold hoop earrings. And there was Councilman Ryan Cost had a well-worn Western plaid shirt with pearl snaps.
Nice. Yes.
I want to say also to check out my Patreon page for the podcast, where I have a bingo for each meeting, and you can see an issue map of all the locations discussed during the meeting. Thank you to 3 new folks who have signed up since the last meeting: Matt, Maddie, and Kate. And thank you to an existing Patreon member, Amanda, who was the inspiration for the title for today's episode. The next meeting will be in 2 weeks on January 26th. Our guest will be Selena Made, new Historical District Commission member. She went out there and joined a board, so we're going to hear about it. Would you like to give any shout-outs?
I have been involved in Recycle Rama since it started.
Nice.
Recycle Rama is an all-volunteer event. It is the largest single-day recycling event in Michigan, and we think in the region, but we're just a little proud of this event. And this is a group effort from a lot of our surrounding municipalities, evidence that we can all work together.
Yay!
And with big love for our hosts at the Ingham County Health Department, who host us every year. It is scheduled for a Saturday, April the 25th. Why am I telling you now? Because you're going to forget about it. And for those of you who've driven through in years past, we take the hard to recycle things. So if it doesn't normally go in your recycle bin,
batteries,
we can collect your batteries, although you can take your batteries to Staples. They have a national contract for recycling. The Staples in Frandor is the best option for those of us who live on this side of town.
Oh, nice.
Yes, you're welcome. We also invite and encourage you to bring any outdated and expired medications. We will have a setup with law enforcement there to take your recycling items.
Okay.
Also, Border Water and Light will be taking your dehumidifiers and window air conditioners as well.
Okay.
It's a great opportunity to get rid of those hard to recycle items. I will note that we do have our own bingo.
Oh!
For Recycle Rama.
Oh!
Yes. So as of now, we like to rank what are the weirdest things that we've gotten at Recycle Rama. And so I want to share that one year we had an actual human skeleton.
Ah! Ah!
It turns out it came out of a classroom from someone who had no longer was an educator and had been sitting at their home for many, many years. And they arrived with this fully intact human skeleton.
Well, that sounds very exciting. I'm putting it on my calendar now, Saturday, April 25th.
You got it.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Jill.
Wonderful to have you here, and amazing all the work that you have done and continue to do.
Thank you.
Thank you to the Public Media Center for letting us record with you, and thank you all for listening.